MTG Scoundrels, it's in the cardboard. Ladies and gentlemen, scoundrels of all ages, welcome back to another episode of Modern Weekly. Today on the docket, we have Frogtide, also known as Dimir Frog or Psychic Dragon Graveyard Explosion, versus Death Shadow, a deck that will adapt to any modern format. Things just getting started here. Of course, Dimir Frog, also known as Frogtide, has really taken the format by storm recently as a good way to combat Nadu decks. Looks like we have land pass into Steam Vents, pay the 2 into a Dragon's Rage Channeler, and passing. Cracking the fetch. Looks like that's a polluted delta there. Finding the Undercity Sewers, one of the surveil lands from Murders at Karlov Manor. Surveilling. Looks like putting the Preordain in the bin. Drawing a card for turn. Watery Grave untapped. Passing the turn. Land for turn. Attacking for 1. Bring us to 16 to 18. And passing. On end step tier, casting a Consider. Looks like surveilling, putting the Murktide in the bin, drawing a card. And there's another Consider. Putting a Frog in the bin, Psychic Frog specifically, and drawing a card. And then drawing a card for turn. There's a polluted delta for land for turn. A fair amount of draw-go magic. Cycling a Street Wraith. Going to 16, drawing a card. Untapping. Drawing. Island for turn. And there is a Tamiyo. One of the powerful new flipwalkers from MH3. And that'll eat a counterspell here. Death Shadow player fetching here. Taking the 2 from the untapped Watery Grave, going down to 13. And there is a Drown in the Lock to counter the counterspell. Surveil trigger from the DRC. keeping it on top, rumbling in, bring us to 15 to 13. End step, cracking the polluted delta. Finding a hedge maze, another one of the surveil lands. Long decision here on the surveil. You have two threats here. Looks like keeping it on top, gonna end up drawing it. Looks like gonna play the Sink into Stupor on its land side, paying the 3 so it comes in untapped. Well, here it is, folks. This is why you add the tide at the end of Frog Tide. There is the Murktide Regent. Exiling 4 cards. Oh, excuse me, 4 instants of sorceries, giving it 4 counters. Untapping, drawing. There's an expressive iteration. There's a counterspell. Surveil trigger. Leaving it on top. Looks like we have creature, land, instant, sorcery in the bin for the Death Shadow player. So Dragon Rage Channeler, now a 3/3. Attacking in. Looks like the Murktide's going to kill the DRC. And there's a pass. Murktide gonna get in for 7 here. Bringing us to 12 to 6. Death Shadow could possibly be an issue now. But a flying Murktide Regent will usually get the job done. So I'm passing the turn. Untapping and drawing. There's the aforementioned Death Shadow. And decisions have to be made here. Looks like moving to combat, Fatal Push, targeting the Tamiyo. Untapping. Attack in with a Murktide Regent. And scooping enough from there. No answer for the Murktide. Game 1. Going to Dimir Frog and Frogtide. Thank you all so much for watching us here at MTG Scoundrels. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe. Be a friend, tell a friend. We enjoy having you here. Sideboarding decisions are a bit interesting. Really, I wouldn't be surprised if the Dimir Frog list brings in a little bit more removal. And same can kind of be said for Death Shadow here. You kind of want to bring in something that can answer the Murktide. You don't have a ton of that main board, I would presume. And in a lot of cases, it's just how quickly can you get your Death Shadow online? And can you do it before Murktide hits the battlefield? Or, honestly, before Psychic Frog hits the battlefield, because Psychic Frog is a house of a card. Feeds your Murktide. Gains flying when you exile multiple cards out of the graveyard. You just have to answer it as soon as you can. Now, if you enjoy these decks, definitely check the description below. There'll be individual deck lists from our players today, as well as timestamps for the individual games. Our two players here, we have Isaac playing Dimir Frog, affectionately known as Psychic Dragon Graveyard Explosion. Isaac, a beloved member of our community here. And on the right, making his debut, we have Gus, a beloved Pioneer player in our community who's been branching out into some Modern. Always good to see him out here. Definitely a Death Shadow lover and a Izzet Phoenix lover in Pioneer. Now, if you're interested in new tokens, definitely check out our friends over at Arcane Artistry. They make stained glass food, treasure, and clue tokens on that stained glass style. And when you put them together, they do in fact make a panorama. Link to their Etsy shop in the description. Definitely check them out. As we shuffle up here, looking into Game 2, it'll be interesting to see how things play out. And the format really has become, are you playing Nadu before the ban on August 26th? Or are you playing Frog, the best deck to really go up against Nadu? Though I think Eldrazi's current list that involves Kozilek's return is a great deterrent for Nadu and for getting through some of these Boros Energy lists, because Boros Energy is still around. It's going to be a mainstay of the format for a bit. And definitely watch out for Mardu. Mardu running that new Ob Nixilis from New Capenna is a very good list. In fact, just in the RCQ I played recently, a bunch made the top 8. So, you got to watch out for that. Looks like on a mulligan decision here, the Frog player is going to go to 6. Deck I haven't seen as much recently is definitely the Necrodominance list. But ultimately, I think that deck is still very strong. There's just a lot of lines, and sometimes that can get tiring over a long tournament. Alright, going to 6 and starting Game 2 here. Looks like starting with the surveil land passing. Polluted Delta looks like was surveilled into the bin for the Death Shadow player. Polluted Delta and passing, it looks like. Untapping, drawing. Scalding Tarn for turn. Tapping 1. There's a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Going to, looks like 19 here. Yep, going to 19. Getting an island, so probably an end step consider or... We'll see. Never mind. Drawing a card. Both players uniquely using dice to keep track of their life totals. There is an untapped Watery Grave, bringing us to 17 to 20. Passing the turn. End step, Street Wraith. Taking 2, but there is an Orcish Bowmaster. So that's going to make an Orc army. Also fetching here, finding an untapped Blood Crypt. Is going to bolt the Bowmaster. Once we've decided where the point of damage is being targeted, to get a Surveil trigger. DRC goes, Bowmaster goes. Missed opportunity here, though, by the Death Shadow player. Should have probably bolted the Orcish Bowmaster in response to the ETB trigger before drawing that card. Though there is a possibility that the bolt was drawn there. It would have left that 1-1 Orc army instead of a 2-2. Which could be relevant. Tapping 2 mana. Alright, there's a new MH3 card you don't see too often. Power Balance. Potentially powerful. Orc army getting in. Brings us to 17 to 12, and the Undercity Sewer is surveilling there. Putting that spell pierce into the bin. Looks like finding a tapped watery grave off of that polluted delta on the instep. Bring us to 17 to 11. And there's another Dragon's Rage Channeler. Passing the turn. I'm seeing creature, land, instant in the bin there, so it's still a 1/1 DRC. Land for turn passing. Cycling a Street Wraith. Going to 9. And there's an expressive iteration. Surveil trigger. And there's a Sink into Stupor. Not a bad play, ultimately. There's not a lot of 3-drops to be hit. And return that power balance back to the hand. Now, in response, still to the EI. Actually, looks like more of in response to the DRC. Surveil trigger. We're going to get a fetch. Finding an island. And there's a spell snare. It's a good way to try to deal with this expressive iteration. However, there is a mystical dispute. That'll counter the spell snare. Surveilled that card into the bin. The land that was on top. Surveilling once again for the Dragon's Rage Channeler. This one will stay on top. Expressive iteration resolves. One to the hand. Deciding on the other two here. One to the bottom. Counterspell to exile. Counterspell looking like it's going to stay exiled based on what mana is available. Swinging him with a DRC that's now a 3/3. And passing the turn. Bring us to 13 to 9. Preordain. Scrying 2. One to the bottom. Drawing the card that would be put on top. And there's a Blood Chief's Thirst. That'll kill a DRC. Another preordain. Scrying 2. One on top. And one on the bottom. Drawing the card. Attacking him for 2. Bringing us to 13 to 7. And passing. There is a Death Shadow. Looking like... it's going to be a 6/6. Yeah, it's going to be a 6/6 here. Tapping 2. Dashing a Ragavan. Attacking him with the dashed Ragavan. That'll get Fatal pushed. Ragavan still seeing some play occasionally out there in Modern. Never thought I'd say that sentence and actually mean it. There is a Flare of Malice. One of the new free spells, give or take, from Modern Horizons 3. I'll get rid of the Death Shadow. Attack in for 2. We're down to 13 to 5. This is the dance you play as a Death Shadow player. One mana. Nethergoyf. Looks like we have creature, sorcery, instant, land. Delirium online, and a 4/5 Nethergoyf. Passing the turn. There is a Consider. Surveilling. Putting a Stern Scolding into the bin, drawing a card. Passing the turn. Thought about doing something there on the end step, decided against it. Scalding Tarn. Fetching. Finding an island. Bringing us to 13 to 4. Two mana. And an Underworld Breach. There's a card you don't see every day in Death Shadow's list. A few options in there, but that's one way to get your Death Shadow back. Looks like we will be starting off by casting a Death Shadow by exiling 3 cards. Death Shadow player making sure to keep at least 4 types in the bin here. So that way that Nethergoyf doesn't shrink. And still deciding on the Death Shadow. And there it is. Exiling 3 cards. Exiling 3 cards. Lightning Bolt's going to target the Orc army. That leaves you in a pretty commanding position. Attacking in with a Nethergoyf for 4, bringing us to 9-4. And that is a 9/9 Death Shadow. Passing the turn, Breach will go in the bin, making it a 5/5. Here's Orcish Bowmasters. On end step. That'll make the Death Shadow a 10/10. Land for turn. And passing. Untapping. Drawing. Frog-type player having 5 mana available to respond. Death Shadow tapping 2. There's a Drown in the Loch targeting the Orcish Bowmaster. Bowmaster will die. Swinging in with the Death Shadow and a Nethergoyf. Taking 5, going to 4. Now 4-3. End step, another Orcish Bowmaster. Sending the Death Shadow player to 2. Drawing a card. Attacking in. Is it lethal? There's a Lightning Bolt targeting the Bowmaster. And there is the Spell Pierce. Game, set, match going to Dimir Frog. Thank you all so much for watching us here at MTG Scoundrels. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe. Be a friend, tell a friend. Tune back in for more modern. And we will see you all next week.